So for this episode are these episodes? They're numbered, so I guess they are. Well, first we need to save Pong 9. So the main thing that I want to work on, let me demonstrate. Actually, this might take a minute, so please hold. Okay, here we go. So if the score on one side is 2 digits, this text is still centered, but that is no longer in the middle of the text that is being centered, the little hyphen. So it looks off center. So what I thought we could do is put one player's score here, the other player's score here, so that it's obvious whose score is whose, and also space out, because this is very center heavy. The balance of this doesn't make sense. I also played the game with a friend for once, instead of just playing against myself. And the two major pieces of feedback I got was that the controls for player 2 don't make sense. Also, by the way, the holding one controller between two players is actually really fun. But they suggested we shift to the buttons to A and B, which on a SNES controller, which I'm using an 8-bit do SN30 Pro, which looks like an SNES controller. A and B fit nicely as an up and down, even though it's at a slight angle, but that makes more sense. And then we make the serve button Y, or if you're using a Switch controller, then it would be B and A, and serve would be X, because the buttons are different. So we need to make that little change. And then the other feedback I got was it would be nice if people could move their paddle during the loading screen. This screen, the start screen. So you have, so that it doesn't just freeze, and then have the ball, if player 1 is serving, have the ball in front of their paddle, so that you can kind of aim your first shot and not just be left to whatever the ball was doing before, and then, launch it across the screen. And then we can look into using the movement of the paddle to control which way you're serving the ball, so that you have a little more control over where it goes. So, first things first, let's fix this center text thing. So we still want the text to be centered, for 1 digit or 2 digits, but we want it to center there, or there somewhere. So the easiest way I thought of doing that was to add an X offset to our little center function. Control O, what's it? Print center. Print center. If we add an X offset here, then we can still print the text centered, but then shift that whole printed text to the left or to the right. So it doesn't matter where we print the text off screen, because it's off screen and nobody's going to see it. We just need the length. But then when we calculate the X position, we have 121, that's the center of the screen, shifted half of the length of the text to the left, and then add our X offset. Now the problem is we're using this function in a bunch of places. So it would be nice if I'm able to send a print center without an X offset, so I don't have to go find every time we use it and send a 0, or always remember to have to send a 0. And it still works, but then if I do want to send an X offset, then I can provide it. So in Python, you can give something a default value, and it'll just assume that value if you don't pass something. On the bad news is Lua can't do that, not out of the box. The good news is if you don't pass this value, Lua assumes that it's null, which we can check for. If I try to do maths using null, if I try to set the X offset with a value of null, it's going to freak out and break. But what I can do is I can say if the X offset is null, you can check for that. Then we set X offset to 0 so that it's an actual value. Now we know it's a safe value. Let's just make X offset optional. Okay, so theoretically nothing should change. I really need a t-shirt that says that. Okay, I don't even have to go any further, because this text still printed centered, this printed centered, this printed centered, and nothing broke. So it's working. Okay. Now we need to find where we print the score. Control F, find score. Oh, this is where we score. This isn't where we print the score. Never mind. It'll be in draw start. Draw start where we print the score. So, well, if I just hit like down on the find thing, I would have found it eventually. So we still want to print center, but we don't want to work out a text line for the score. We just want the two scores. So this we don't need. Just update this little comment to say everything that we're sending. And then print. Don't have a score text anymore. Print. What's it? P1 score. I should have kept that line there just for reference. And 42, but we wanted to offset. If 120 is half the screen, then 60, and this needs to be on the left, so minus 60. Okay, this should print player 1's score on the left and nothing else. Cool. Then duplicate this line. That's Control D, by the way, but you can also, without selecting anything, press Control C, Control V. Oh, well, that works in VS Code, Visual Studio Code. So this would then be player 2 score on the right, because this offset is positive. And run. Cool. Let's make sure the right scores are in the right places. This should add to the right. And this should add to the left. Okay, we're still printing the correct score in the correct spot every time. Maybe it should be bigger, because this doesn't look like a number. What if we double the size? Ah, it looks like a face if you look at it from far enough back. Cool. I'm happy with that. Okay, now how do we let players serve? We need to know who scored, right? So let's add a new global, call it active player, and we just set it to 1 for now. Oh wait, it makes sense for player 1 to be the active player when the game starts. Oh, I remember. No, we can't reset it. Okay, when the game starts, player 1 is active, but the ball is moving left. So we need to update the starting DX of the ball to go to the right. Okay, how do we see who starts? In draw starts, we need to draw starts. We need to tell it who starts. So if active player is equal to equals is to compare things. 1 equal is to assign values. Then else end. Okay. We're going to need this line again. Emd. End. Okay, print center. Player 1 ready. Player 2 ready. This we can also technically change. Maybe we should think about displaying controls on screen, especially because our launch button, the serve button, is a weird button because we're sharing a controller. So let's not print this yet, but then in a future episode, maybe the next episode, we can look into displaying down. Well, it works. It's a bit big. Anyway, maybe down here and down here we show player score, like the player controls, so that they can see what they need to press. If I make this a bit smaller, save, run. That space looks weird. Save, run. I don't know if that's any better. Okay, undo, 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 undo. Let's make this. Let's swap it around. Oop, there's still a hyphen, a dash, a bang there. What if we print the player name, print ready. Oh, what am I doing? Print ready every time. I'm doing this much as a... What am I? This is not going well. Okay. Grab this text. Always print the word ready. And nice and big. And then the text underneath, I can hijack these values. Text underneath, we say player 1 or player 2. What's this look like? Ready Player 1. Like the book. Or the movie. Who was that? Ernest Cline, I think. Pretty decent book, but at a certain point it starts feeling like you're basically reading the Wikipedia article for the 1980s. So the movie is almost as good as the book, but I still think the book is better. Sorry for the tangent. Okay, are we happy with this? Ready Player 1. Let's make sure it changes. No, we need player 2 to become ready. We're not changing it yet. Where do we score? Oh, well, let's do this thing again. Score. When player 1 scores, no wait, this, yeah, when player 1 scores, we play the sound effect. We set active player to 1. This seems weird considering that we already set it to 1 at the top, but this will fire every time they score. So, and then this one would be 2. So, if the ball goes out to the right side of the screen, player 1 scores, we play the sound effect, we set that as the active player, and then we reset. If it goes off the left side of the screen, player 2 scores, we play the sound effect, the active player is set to 2, and then we reset. Which means if player 2, now because player 2 scored, the ball should still be going that way. Okay. So it says ready player 1, right? But I can still play the... Which button is it again? I can still press the launch button for player 2, which seems unfair because it means if I am fighting for the ball and I'm trying to catch it and my fat thumbs are still on the controller when it scores, I might accidentally start the next round. So in input start, what we should do is only respond to the button for whichever player is active. So instead of checking both controllers, what's the easiest way to do this? I don't like doubling up code, but I can check one controller. Like I can check if the active player is 1, check the button for paddle 1. If it's player 2, check for player 2. OK button. Or otherwise, if we give each paddle an ID, then we can compare the ID to the active player. And if they're the same, we respond to that paddle's OK button. So we keep the loop in, right? Which means we are still checking both controllers. But if pad.id is equal to active player and the button is being pressed, then we skip wait start. But then the pads need IDs. So control home all the way to the top. Paddles. Paddle P1 has an ID of 1. Paddle 2 has an ID of 2. Put spaces so everything nicely lines. Oh, it doesn't have to line up. That's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, let's try it. Now the player 1 is ready, which means I can spam the buttons on the right side of the controller and nothing happens. But if I press... Oh wait, nothing happens. Pad.id equals 2, pad.id equals 1. Input start. If pad.id is equal to active player, typo, because active player would always be null. Okay, so left controller does nothing, right controller launches. Cool. Let's get player 2 to score so that control moves to the other side. Now pressing everything on the left side of the controller does nothing, but player 2 can launch. Hey! Okay. The other thing I mentioned was changing the controls so that they make more sense, which should be a reasonably quick one. Over here. Okay, I'm going to need my reference for the buttons again. So for P1 it stays the same. For P2 we need the up button to be B, which is 5, and the OK button to be Y, which is 7. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, player 1 obviously in controls, so there we go. Just had to think about that for a second. Then let player 2 score. Okay. Yes. Awesome. I'm happy with that. Maybe we should make a sound when the round starts. So let's make a where's the... There we go. Okay, we have the ball hit sound. Oh, ball bounce sound, ball hit sound, score. We can reuse this. Copy, paste. But let's pitch it up a bit. So this will be the sound for the ball to launch, and this will be when you score. And then, so where do we do this? When we switch wait start, so when the round actually begins. So that's an input start. Inputs start. Here where we set wait start. Let's quickly play. What was the number of that sound effect? Number 3. 3. Okay, and go. It's maybe a little loud. So let's just duck the volume on that a little bit. Too much. Halfway. Yeah. Cool. That's that done. Okay, next up, we should think about giving players control of the paddles during the start screen so that you can aim. And then move the ball in front of the paddle so that you can aim. Those are two separate things. Make the paddles move so that you realize the game is actually running and not frozen. And stick the ball to the paddle, which allows you to kind of aim where it goes. And then maybe be able to change which way the ball is going based on which way your paddle is moving.